Hello everyone, my name is Sophie Marie and this is my colleague Wojciech. We're here together recording from Sweden today, bringing you a study that evaluates the feasibility of circular charging ecosystems for transport operators, and we're from Örebro University. Let's start a little bit with the background and how the situation is here in Sweden. Overall, the government has decided to really put forward quite ambitious national goals to decarbonize the transport sector. Specifically, the goal for heavy vehicles is actually to cut emissions by 70% in already the next 8 years and cut them down to net zero until 45. So the plan here is really to enable a large-scale electrification of road freight transport, and we're looking at a broad mix of different technological options. Of course, battery-powered vehicles, stationary charging networks, but also electric road systems are currently being investigated, as well as are now in the building phase, and also hydrogen fuel cell technology might play a role. Again, we see a large amount of technological neutrality here, so some of the governmental documents also at least consider e-fuels as part of the solution. Nevertheless, electrification as such is not just swapping one fuel source for another, but we really see that there's potential profound changes that also need to be done when it comes to the existing business models of transport operators. Overall, electrification really relates to increased operational complexity. There is still an insufficient amount of charging infrastructure, and therefore we really see a slow adoption in Sweden of commercial heavy vehicles, especially outside of governmentally funded demonstration projects. Adding to that, now of course we have also an energy crisis here in Sweden that came about through the war in the Ukraine, so the fluctuating electricity prices really add to the uncertainties. So essentially, our study really wants to address some of these uncertainties and take a closer look at some of the problems that these transport operators are now facing, and wants to understand better if there's maybe a different alternative forms of charging that allow for the wireless charging of electric trucks with self-produced climate neutral electricity. And that's where we end up with the circular charging ecosystem. So essentially, our circular charging ecosystem has four main components, starting with solar photovoltaics on the rooftops of these logistics centers run by the transport operators that can be stored in second life battery storage systems. The energy there then feeds directly into autonomous charging stations and then can charge the fourth component, the electric truck. Overall, the idea is here that the transport operators will benefit from financial savings, of course, carbon reductions, and they can lower their overall energy dependencies. Also, of course, this is all off-grid in the sense that we will remove pressure from the local grid, and the electricity life cycle emissions to power the EVs will overall also be lower. Let's take a look at these individual parts of the circular charging ecosystem. If we're looking at the PVC panels, for example, here it's really all about on-site electricity generation from renewables and using unused roof space. So many of the different logistics centers that we're seeing, at least in Sweden, have yet to actually fully reach their potential and build these amounts of solar panels that can really help them generate their own electricity. And essentially what you can build on many of these roofs is industrial scale solar panel systems. What you see on the pictures, logistics center, for example, this is about 16,000 panels on an 80 square meter roof. And that really provides you then with a pretty impressive output of about 8.9 megawatt at full operations, and that would really amount to 7.8 gigawatt hours annually. So a huge potential to really produce their own energy. Even so, in a country like Sweden, where again, especially during wintertime, we do not have as much sun. Then we get to the second part, which is the energy storage. Here it's all about utilizing second life EV batteries from passenger cars. The battery sizes in the calculations that we're currently using, this is actually a Volvo car, so an XC40 Recharge, and the sizes range between 60 and 80 kilowatt hour per battery. and they will be then connected to the vehicle chargers. If we're looking at about 8 to 10 of such batteries, they will probably be able to provide to four to 5 to maximum 6 charging stations, depending on the charging power. And really, by utilizing battery storage of this scope, we can really contribute to also improve power regulation and energy storage in the logistics center. So that can also then perform a stabilizing function for the evolving electricity network around these different logistics centers. Maybe most of you will be mostly interested or predominantly interested in the autonomous charging station. Essentially, we're using a form of bottom-mounted wireless charging system that connects automatically to the charging platform and then feeds electricity into the vehicle battery. Essentially, you have to imagine this as a little pickup that is mounted at the bottom of the truck and then just like automatically senses when it is within the electromagnetic field of the charging platform and then docks onto. I think one of the strengths of wireless charging is that it integrates much better than classic stationary charging with off-grid renewable technology. Quite importantly also, there's no technological lock-in in the sense that you put out one type of charger just to be replaced in a couple of years by megawatt charging technology, because here really with this type of power transfer, it's possible to scale it up and down as to your liking. Again, if we're looking at the daily operations of these transport operators, this would really allow for a constant seamless top-up charging of batteries while loading and unloading. Overall, we would hope to see higher vehicle uptime and payloads. Interestingly, also this can charge multiple vehicles at one time. And again, we're also trying to see what type of battery sizes are then actually required, and there's quite a lot of indication already that we could probably use vehicles with much smaller batteries, thus again reduce the costs, the upfront investment costs for the transport operators. Lastly, again, also quite a strong circular component of this setup is the electric vehicles. In this project specifically, we would actually like to look at converting existing internal combustion engine trucks to electric power. Companies as such already exist in Sweden. Again, we're looking at a reduced upfront investment, but also we can really make use of those types of resources that are already circulating in the transport system, and hopefully increase the speed of transition, since there's not really a phase out needed. We work a lot with transport operators who maybe have 4 or 5 year old ICE trucks. They don't want to get rid of them. If they can actually convert these in a convenient way, we really do believe that we can contribute to an accelerated transformation towards electrification. Overall, one must say that this is currently mostly available for light commercial vehicles, and while it can be done in practice also for the heavy vehicles, this has not been formally adopted. And one of the main barriers here actually is that with especially the Swedish vehicle manufacturers, if the trucks are being converted, so to speak, it really violates their maintenance and insurance agreements. That means at the end of the day, for the truck operator, it's not possible.
Okay, so in this paper, we formulated 4 key areas of interest, or 4 problem areas that need to be solved for this whole model to be viable. So first, we have a business case and financing models. So this whole infrastructure project needs to be financed somehow, and since it's on a major scale, it can't be just the companies themselves, just the users. It needs to be organized on some higher levels, such as regional level or industry park level, perhaps. And then, of course, there's the running of the whole thing. So this needs to have some business model. It needs to be operated by some entity. It needs to offer some sort of payment solution, some sort of user agreement, and ideally someone also needs to profit from it, right? Then we have the technological requirements, and we see quite a few competing technologies at the moment, and they need to be able to put them in one interoperable system. And then we have the user experience and work process. So all the freight operators currently operate on a very similar ways, and they have their workers. But with this high level of infrastructural changes, perhaps there is also a space for updating these work processes that are now decades old, right? And of course, all this needs to be legislated somehow. It needs to be governed. And we see that there are we don't see any progress on this from the government side. So we actually talked to the companies, and for each of these 4 problem areas, we identified some sub-problems that need to be solved. And on this figure, you can see that the problems that are further from center, that are of higher importance, and those that are in the darker areas closer to the center, those are those of relatively lower importance. So, for example, in the business case, we see logistics as a service or digital payment solutions as the main problematic areas. And then if you go to the business case, as I said, it's we see this as two business models or two ecosystems that need to cooperate. So it needs to be built on one is the one built and financed. That's the one business case and one business model. And the other business model is the running of the whole infrastructure. And all of this needs to be operated by someone. All of this needs to be financed by someone. So this charging as a service model is one of models that we are looking at. So some entity owns and operates the infrastructure, and the companies, the freight operators, they pay for its usage. So for the technical requirements, the big question mark here are the batteries, so the technology and the size that it's going to be needed for the light and heavy vehicles. And most importantly, it needs to be safe to use. And second, very important thing here is the interoperability of the different solutions. So the solar panels, the battery storage systems, and the charging systems need to cooperate, and they need to be put in one systems. The user experience, and this is something that when we talk to the companies, they are a little bit unsure about this, because on one side, they would really benefit from, for example, being able to run more vehicles during nighttime. So right now they are bound by working conditions of their workers and by safety regulations for their workers. But of course, this development could potentially lead to autonomous vehicles, and they could run during the nighttime. On the other side, for right now, it's obviously more beneficial for the whole system if the vehicles are charged during nighttime, because that's where we see the low consumption of electricity overall. So this is something that works both ways, and it's currently unclear where does it develop. So in our projects, we are looking at this. So we are talking to workers, we are talking to drivers, we are talking to the operators, and we are seeing how could this develop in a sustainable way. And the last part, one of the problem areas, is definitely governments and legislation. So it's currently very unclear what the governments put up the big goal of basically removing all emissions from freight transport, but it's a little bit unclear how they are going to achieve this. So, for example, what kind of incentives are going to be provided for various levels, and so on. So if you're working on a similar project regarding dynamic charging or charging infrastructure overall, or do you have experience in the vehicle refitting ecosystem, or perhaps you know about any solutions for the interoperability of the solutions for this mid-tier off-grid charging solutions, let us know, and we are always happy to cooperate with someone.
Thank you for today.